Can you hear us now? Unfortunately, you just missed me recite some Shakespeare beautifully, and I actually ad-libbed some stuff that's, probably a bit better, but I'm not going to repeat that. You'll just have to. Slight echo. Oh, let's kill that.
Maybe you want to use the microphone on your phone instead of mine.
No. Right, kill yours.
Done.
Okay, can everybody hear us okay?
That is the.
Okay, how about now?
Okay,
How about now? All good? Cool. And it's loud enough? Great. Okay. Right. So what we were saying before was that we're going to try and put this Deye stackable battery together in less than an hour. Jeff reckons 10 to 15 minutes based on what we did the other day.
Yep.
I think it's going to be a bit longer because we've got boxes to unpack and things like that. We've got two cameras. One of them is just static, and the other one we can pick up and sort of show you interesting bits if we feel we need to. This thing over here, so there's sort of three components when you order this. There's the inverter, there's the batteries, and there's this thing called a PDU. So when you're doing the full stack with the inverter on the top, you use this thing called a PDU-3. And then if you're just doing a stack of batteries without the inverter on top, you use what's called a PDU-1. And you'll see what this is now. So I'll bust this open. Inside we've got this thing. And this is going to go on top of the batteries once we have stacked them all up. So we'll kind of put that to the side for a bit, and we'll show you more about that later. And then we've got this thing over here. A base unit. It also comes with these little legs as well. They screw into the bottom like this. Because we're on a carpeted floor, I'm not going to put these in, but you can add 5 minutes to the clock or something like that for me to screw all those in. I'm going to put this over here up against the wall. And there's a little blue stripe. I'm guessing that that's the front. Let's put that in. And now we're going to grab our first battery. So these batteries are they're not super heavy. 30 kilos or something like that?
Yeah.
So 53. Okay. So not really. You're not really going to lift it by yourself easily. Be careful with this stuff. Down on the ground, so just get this stuff out of the way.
Maybe one of them.
Yeah, we'll show those. Just stuff in the back. So what we've got over here, I'll get Jeff on camera. get Jeff on Jeff cam. Let's show them on the base over here. We've got this little connection over here on our base, and then on our first battery, we've got the same thing. We actually need to scoot this around a bit, but I'll just lift it up because on the base there's going to be a little connection point down here. Let me show that, Jeff. There we are. So we're going to lift this on. I'll need your help, Jeff. Jeff used to be a personal trainer, because I used to be a stick and stick. So that's battery number one. In here, in the battery compartment, we've got these little angle brackets for mounting it to the wall. Because we're just doing this temporarily, we're not going to put these in, but we're just going to screw onto the side over here. It's just like IKEA furniture, really. It's just going to fit on there, isn't it? It's got like a slot, you can see, so you can get the distance right. Put a play in it, little bolt. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Where is it gonna place?
Yeah. Onto the next battery. So there's a limit to the number of batteries that you can do. Does the base need to be screwed to the floor? Yeah, there's some instructions about that. Check that in a moment. But there's a limit to the number of batteries you can have. If you're not putting an inverter on top, the maximum is 6. If you are putting an inverter on top, the manual doesn't seem to say this, but what we've been told is that it's 5. And I think the reason for that is because otherwise you're going to be over the 2 meter height limit for the inverter. These out of the way. So that's 2. That's pretty quick. We're going for time. 10 minutes. I think there's 2 options from the manual. We'll grab it open in a moment. I think there's using the little feet that I showed you, or I think there's another option. I think there's 2 ways of doing it. So what's that? 1, 2, 3. How high are we? Waist height. Look at that, Jeff's lifting the battery all by himself. Careful. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's quite high already. Before we put the last battery on, let's just have a look at how high that is with the PDU on top. So that put the PDU on. It's that in. Strike at the top. So that's 4, and that's a PDU, and then we put our inverter on top. So that's quite high already. I guess we'll do the last one and see what we think, but I'm thinking that in practice maybe 4 is more practical, because I'm not 100% sure where it's written. I think it's just AS3000 about having switchboards higher than 2 meters. And I think the controls of the inverter can't be greater than 2 meters or something like that. Somebody else will probably know. Images in reverse. That'll be right. Let's take this off again. So you can see how if you're doing 6 is going to be crazy high once you put an inverter on top. Put it down. All right. It's not on. There we go. So what we can show you at the top here is it's also got, this is where the power connections are between each battery. So I did a little bit of investigation into this with a multimeter. So there's just 2 positives and 2 negatives and an earth. And the positives and negatives are just in parallel with each other. So we'll draw a little diagram of that at the moment. Sorry, at the end. And then this bit here, it's basically just an RJ45 or a Cat5, I should say, connection, which is for the CAN bus pass through. So it's pretty neat. Now, for the PDU one. So, I'm 1.78 centimeters, so we're nearly at 2 meters here already, before we even put the inverter on. But let's just have a chat about this PDU first. So on the side, on this side, we've got a positive and a negative and a comms connection here. Yeah, okay. We got these 2 here, a little vent plug. And then over on the other side, we've got the same thing, and an on-off switch, and a built-in breaker. And then each battery has a breaker on the side as well. So these are here in case you want to have an additional stack, and they're just your standard like Amphenol style connector, which will bridge over to another stack. You could have 6 batteries. I don't think you have to match the number of stacks. You could have, say, 3 on each side and then 4 in the middle or something like that, because it's 48 volts and they're all just wired in parallel. It's not series, it's not high voltage. So it just stays at 48 volts. The thing that I like about the concept of this is that, and I've tested this with the inverter already, is that the batteries in the inverter, even though they're part of this integrated system, they can operate independently of each other. So if in the future the batteries, something happens to the batteries, they don't work anymore, and you can't get any more of them because Deye have stopped making them, you would still be able to use the inverter, say with some Discover or some Pylon-Tech batteries, because the inverter is exactly the same as the normal Deye inverter that mounts on the wall. It's exactly the same. When we get out of the box, I'll show you some stuff with that. And the same for the batteries. The batteries don't have to be connected to a NAR converter to operate. They're just normal 48-volt batteries. I'm not sure about the managed aspect of that. I assume that's still the same sort of pylon canvas protocol, but we'd have to check that. But it means that you're not locked into this ecosystem in the same way that you might be with some other systems, which I think is quite attractive. This PDU on the top, which is sort of the connection box between the batteries and the inverter, you can actually fit that on the base and then put the inverter on top of it, and so operate it without the batteries at all. And I did that, and I just hooked it up to a power supply a few days ago, and it turned on as per normal. I'm not sure you wouldn't ever really want to do that because you just use a wall mounted one, but it's interesting to know that you can do it if you want to. Let's get the inverter out, shall we? Questions? Does the breaker switch both positive and negatives? Yes, it does. 15 minutes for 6 units. David. It's probably going to take us twice as much time to put it all back in the boxes. I did talk to Richard about offering a discount for somebody who wants to buy all the stuff that we've taken out of the box. I didn't ever get around to finding out what it was, but if someone's keen to have this stuff that's been used for a bit of a discount, let us know. If you could just jet cam over here a bit. Let's just show them it before we get to lift it out. So we've got the inverter in the box here. You've got a screen on the front, and it's got handles on each side for lifting it up. Do you reckon we're going to get it up there?
Hard.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think we should take one of the batteries off.
Okay.
Because I think, especially because we're not mounting them to the wall, I'm a bit worried that we're going to get ourselves in trouble. PDU back up. The little connection port on the top is on the opposite side, so you can't accidentally put the inverter straight onto the batteries. Swap sides. The inverter is pretty light compared to the batteries. Maybe we would have got it up there. Actually, let's put it down for a second. I want to show people the back. So on the back, you can see this is the big heat sink on the back, and you can see these little cutouts here, which I think are for the original mounting bracket for the wall unit. So you can see that it really is just an adapted version of the same Deye / Noah inverter that we all know and love. And then let's have a look at these before we put it up there, because it's going to be easier on the camera angles. So on the back here is where we've got the connection points for PV, and then comms cables, not the AC, that's on the side. And I'll show you that in a moment when we put it all up there, it'll be easier. But the PV stuff, PV MC4s are all on the back here. Oh no, I think your AC cable does come out of here, but the wiring axis is round on the side here. So let's put it up, and we'll do a better job of showing you that.
This is only like 25 kilo.
Okay.
And,
That's good. Okay, so now we're up here. How long did that take? It's 4:22. So including talking, not including putting the side brackets on, that's pretty good. Does the extension cable to go between the two towers come in the PDU box? I don't know. I don't think it does. I think it's a separate item. I think it's a separate line item. So let's just have a look at what we got here. We've got, these are the handles we used to lift it up with. You've got an on-off switch here. That's your PV isolator. It's the on-off switch for the PDU. And then this, we take this off to fix the Wi-Fi dongle. Have a look at that in a bit. Then around here on the other side, we've got this plate here. And then there is where those grommets are we spoke about before. So let's open this up. I'm going to grab that. I'll grab the screwdriver on the side of that. I guess this is kind of like an unboxing video, you know, you do on YouTube. Maybe someone could just watch us eat a sandwich. Okay, so we take off this panel here. And we've got on the side here, if you can get in there, Jeff, we've got generator input AC connection, got load, and we've got grid, and then we've got our BMS port and our meter port. And we've got two parallel ports. And that's the DRM port there. So if you're in Queensland, you use that. Otherwise, I'm not going to worry about it. And this port here, I think that's the BMS port. So we keep that plugged in. It's got this one that says test. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming you don't use that. Okay. So it's pretty straightforward. Because we're doing well for time, maybe we could take off one of these drives and just quickly wire up some AC. Demo. Anything tricky about this? You can see I'm just going to pass this in from here. Fail. Make sure we're all the way open first. Okay, that's the problem. It's pretty solid. That's pretty good. The access is pretty good. You've got room for the conduit to come out there and come around a bend, I suppose. I think that's pretty good. Smooth connection here. So once you've done that, you're going to put this plate back on. So just add a couple of minutes for the rest of that wiring. Put this stuff back on. A couple of minutes for having plugged our PV in around the back. I mean, it's got these comms grommets, but of course, you don't need to run them down to the battery because it's already done. I think everybody gets the gist of it. So now that we've done that, maybe we should try turning it on. So we've got breakers here. Okay, we'll turn our inverter on, see if it fires up. Right, yeah. I know, you've got a light on. Cool. Great. So I'm not going to do a full commissioning. I've only turned one of them on so far.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh, they're all doing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So that means that comms is all happening. So we won't do like a full commissioning video. We'll do another one of those, but we can show you just this menu is identical to the normal Deye menu. So to commission it, we're just going to go into settings here, battery settings. Of course, it's going to be on lithium mode. Oops. Yeah.
Oh, it's totally upside down.
Can you flip it? Mirror my video. Turn it off. Cool. Okay. So go to the cog, battery settings, set it to lithium mode, set your grid charge kick-in point and current rating, low battery shutdown, restart, inverter. And then you've got your advanced function, turn off DRM mode. That's interesting. This comes not ticked on for this, which is good. The other inverters come with DRM switched on as default, and you have to switch it off unless you're in Queensland. That's a really easy error to make. You want to have BMS error stop off. You wouldn't have to bother with this just for a single stack. Yeah, the menu is identical to the other one. The system work mode, this is where you want to set it up for how you're going to use the grid, because if it's a grid tie setup, then obviously you don't want it just using power, whatever power is available from the grid whenever it can. Unlike off-grid setup, when the generator's on, you're usually just using as much power from it as you can. So this is where you control that. So there's a few different modes, but most of the time you're going to be doing 0 export to CT. And then you can also sell excess solar when you're in that. So that basically means you wouldn't export any battery power, but you would sell excess solar power, 0 export to CT. And then you've got time of day where you can set different states of charge for the battery. And this is if you want to sell the battery or charge from the grid to take into account. You know, if you have one of the new free tariffs between 11 and 2, you could charge battery up using this interface here. Like I said, I'm not going to go through everything, but this is just identical to the wall mount version. I'm pretty sure there's nothing different whatsoever. What we haven't talked about is CTs. So it comes with a CT in the box here. Will the system accept the generator? We've got questions. Will the system accept a generator? Yeah, it will accept a generator. It's exactly the same as the others. So on this port here, I'm glad that I didn't put all these in. We've got 3 AC connections. So you've got grid, load, and generator. So you can put the grid into this one and a generator into there, and then your normal loads here. You can actually just put, if you're off grid, you can just put the generator into here instead, and then you can use that as like they call it like a smart load port, because it's just a contactor, right, on the AC bus. So instead of it controlling the generator input, it can just be a smart load output. So just turn it off when the battery's at a certain state of charge, or you can use it for an AC coupled inverter. Maybe you've got an existing one, and you can put the AC coupled inverter on the load output, but you could put it on the gen port, and then it would be able to turn off the AC coupled inverter without turning the loads off if it wanted to. But it will frequency shift the AC coupled inverter. We were talking about, I'll address the question first. No need to put wires for the communication between the battery and the inverter. That's right, Rashan. So when I showed you that little, on the top of the battery, that sort of plug interface that had the 2 positives and the 2 negatives and the ground, and then it had a little sort of 9-pin connector.
You got there.
Oh yeah, over here. 1, 2, 3. 12-pin connector. So this is basically your equivalent of a Cat5 cable going between the batteries. So it just does all of that for you, which is nice that it takes the issues out. We set that to lithium, and you can see it's just got all the lithium information has come up straight away here, which is great. So the external DC connections are for a separate inverter. No, not on this setup that we've got here, Gary. These external DC connections are for if you're going to add another battery stack. If you weren't using the inverter on the top, you would use the PDU1, which has basically the same thing, a similar setup. But in this instance, that's not what that's designed for. They're for separate battery stacks. IP rating is IP65. So it comes with a CT. Again, this is exactly the same as the wall mount one. And that's going to go into, I think it's pins 5 and 6 of this grey connection. You just push them in, but you also can just use a meter as well. There's a E-Strong meter which you run Cat5 to, and you're just going to plug the Cat5 into one of these plugs on here, and then run that to your switchboard. What we've discovered is that lots of people were using the meters, and then they've slowly, I think Gary Baker can testify to this, that they slowly discovered that actually they can just extend the CTs, and that's quicker and easier for them. Just using the same Cat5 cable, maybe 2 pairs on the white and 2 pairs on the black. When you're commissioning these, whether you're using the meter or the CT, a really easy mistake to make is to get the CT the wrong way around. And so I just recommend that when you put it together, just put a big load on and just watch the direction of the power. And if it's not going the right way, turn it around, just turn the CT around, or you can just flip the CT wires around the other way. It's just an important thing to check before you leave site, because it will do all sorts of wacky stuff if it thinks that it's exporting when it's not. The other thing is that I've got this in as a test. This is just a cheapie from AliExpress, but this is a wireless RS485 extender, so you could run this for the meter, and instead of running Cat5 cable a long way, you'd use this at each end. It comes in as a pair of them, but this is we haven't tested this out yet. If it works, maybe we might start offering those. So that's most of it. So it's about half an hour to put it in. I think I'm pretty impressed with that. I'm not sure about having 5 batteries. I think that might be a bit much. Should we have a look at this Wi-Fi bit here? It's just a little stick on the bottom. I think you just peel this off.
Yep.
There we go. And then it's just got a USB connection for the Wi-Fi dongle. So that's exactly the same. Coming up. Not really. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Put that back. But what I do want to sort of talk about is the philosophy behind the wiring of it. So they're 48-volt batteries, and so stacking them on top of each other like this. And we've got our inverter at the top. And we've got positive and negative on each battery. And they're wired in parallel. They're not wired in series. And if you were doing this, strictly speaking, the way you would want to wire this would be your negative connects to the top one, and then your positive would connect to the bottom one, so that you've got an equal amount of resistance across the entire bank. And so it's not going to be the case that the first battery is going to see a higher voltage than the last battery. When you're dealing with lead acid battery banks, this is a really big concern. And you know, back in the bad old days, you'd go to somebody's off-grid house and you'd see like a big long line of different brands of truck batteries and second-hand weird batteries, and they would have just a big long line of them, and they've got the inverter connection and the charger connection just at one end, and it's just adding insult to injury every time they add another one. With lithium batteries, because the BMS, they have a separate BMS in each one, I think it's less of a concern, but I don't think it's no concern. In this style of arrangement, the way they've got this wired, and this is what I checked with a multimeter on the BMU when I got it out, is that it's just wired like this. It's just wired to the top battery, and then it's got 2 connections all the way down. But it's not the case that it sort of goes down and then comes back up from the bottom like that, or something clever like that. I was wondering if the 4 connections were doing that, but it's not. It's just wired in like that, and then it's got a big bus that goes down. Now, in theory, if the bus is big enough, the resistance is low enough, it's not going to be a problem, because there won't be enough resistance. The difference in resistance between here and here and here and here just won't be great enough to cause a problem. And I think that's probably going to be the case with the stacking battery. I don't think that's going to be a real problem. But when you start adding other stacks, and you're coming out of these ones on the side, then I think you're going to have to pay attention to the sides of the cable that goes between them. And you're going to think about that a little bit more, because that's going to get kind of complicated pretty quickly, especially if you made your own cables and you've got one on each side. So I think you'd have to be a little bit careful with that. And that might be an argument for if you're doing off-grid systems with large battery banks, you might stick with the normal Deye wall-mounted inverter and batteries like the Helios batteries. And this style of setup is more going to be an on-grid load shifting application where the name of the game is installing it quickly, getting a rebate, keeping the price low for the customer, and just convenience, and it looks good, as opposed to something which is designed to run in any circumstance. But the hardware of the inverter it's identical. I don't think there's going to be any performance issues, any performance difference. The ventilation, so you can see, come around the side here, it's got these fans on the side, so it's the same as the vertically mounted one, but because its orientation is different, I guess that's something to think about. Can you put the PDU in the middle for multiple stacks? Well, the PDU, there's two different types of PDU. This is the PDU 3, and this is what you use when you're putting an inverter on top. If you have a second set of batteries, you'll do everything exactly the same, but you'll use what they call the PDU 1, which just doesn't have the connection on the top and just has these breakout connections in order to connect it over to here to the stacking battery or to go to a normal wall-mounted battery. PDU in the middle for multiple stacks. Does that cover what you mean, Pedro? I'm not sure what you're getting at. If you had multiple stacks and multiple inverters, that might be a different matter. Pedro, can you stack batteries on top of the PDU? No, the PDU comes last because the interface that connects them to the batteries is on the right-hand side. Then the interface that connects it to the inverter is on the left-hand side. So you couldn't put a battery on top of the PDU, but you wouldn't want to because I'm not sure why you'd want to have it halfway rather than the top. You just put the number of batteries you want to have, and you put the PDU in place, and then put the inverter on top. And if you want to have more batteries, then you could, in theory, you put another one here, but it's going to be a bit high, like we discovered, or you can put another stack next to it and wire those in. Does that answer your question, Pedro? How are we going for time? 4:45. It's pretty good. He's going to call us later. Okay. Any other questions while we've got people here? I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it's pretty good. Nope, no more questions? Does the IP rating of the batteries refer to the inverter modules or when they are all connected? It's going to be when they're all connected, because if we have a look at this one over here, these are the power connections here. So, that's definitely not IP rated. And you've got this little weather seal around the outside. So once you put it all together, then you've got that. The other thing we didn't show is that there's these in the battery compartment. It comes with these little screws here, and these just go in the side over here. When you stack each battery and put the PDU on, they just mechanically connect them together. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. Certainly very fast. And I think the advantage of it being 48 volts and not being locked in is quite a selling point. Yeah. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I guess we can leave it there. We can, I think, because we hadn't done wall mounting brackets and some of the other little bits and pieces, but we've done a lot of talking and mucking about on other things. I reckon that we can say 45 minutes, and we can say that's a yes, that we can do it in less than an hour. And if you know, we had a play with the PDU and the inverter the other day, but this is the first time we've done the batteries. So I'm sure once you've done it before a couple of times, it would be lightning, really. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you to everybody for coming along. And if anybody's interested in getting this stuff at a slight discount because the box has been opened, just give me a call and I'll chat to Richard. I don't know what he had in mind, but something's better than nothing, right? Cool. All right. Thank you.